Hello, everybody. I'm Barry Shackelford. I'm that grumpy old sergeant. And I got tired of the news and the politicians and everybody not explaining properly what the problem is with our budget deficits and the surpluses that other countries have basically been running against us since World War II. Okay? When I was a child, back in the 60s, most of the people that we knew, the husbands of those families worked in factories of one sort or another here in Michigan, and they were in fact middle class. They had good houses, they had a car, and the wives did not work, most of them, and they were middle class. And then starting in the 70s, especially in the later 70s, both the mom and the dads of these families worked, a lot of in factories or in other jobs, and they were middle class, with both of them working. And today, we got both of them working, and they are not middle class. They can't afford to buy a good house, if they can afford to buy a house at all. They drive junk cars, and if they have a family, a lot of them have food sufficiency problems. Our middle class, as I knew it as a kid, does not exist for the most part. Yeah, there are some people who are middle class, but not many. Up here in Michigan, not many. The poor people have gotten poorer, and the middle class are now lower class getting poorer as well. Now, what is the reason for that? Well, we outsourced all of our manufacturing. And since World War II, a lot of countries, friend or foe, like Canada, Germany, a lot of the European countries, Japan, Korea, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, you name it. The list just goes on and on and on of countries that have built their economy off of shipping whatever they wanted into this country tariff-free. So now, for instance, depending on whose figures you want to believe, because even in government, they distort the numbers of actual trade deficit. With Canada, for instance, last year in 2024, some people are saying that they had a trade surplus with us of $261 billion. Another governmental agency says, no, that's $267 billion. Another one says, no, it's more like $369 billion. So take it who you want to believe. The government, the federal government, different agencies are putting out different numbers. They don't match. In Europe, with the European Union, it's even higher. In Germany, they have the strongest economy of all the 27 European countries. But the reason why their economy is so strong is like Japan and Korea. In Germany, it's exporting cars to us. In Japan, it's cars, motorcycles, and electronics. In Korea, it's cars and electronics, primarily. But in other countries, it's other things. Like you got wine and three or four other things in France that they import in here. And so we end up with trillions of dollars in deficit. Well, this isn't hard to figure out what's happening. But on the TV and in the politicians, you don't say, well, for every dollar that we send abroad with our trade deficit, the bottom line is that's money that's not available in our economy for investment or spending or whatever. And eventually, when you let these people, of course, do all this importing of non-agricultural products, then you lose your manufacturing base. It's not hard to figure out. And you stop building manufacturing plants and all this. And now everything, including the drugs we take, is made by foreign countries. So when Trump is saying, well, we're going to put a tariff on all these, we're going to take down the amount of money that is leaving our country because a lot of these products at the tariffs he's imposing are not going to be able to come in. Some will. In Europe, I personally disagree with the number of vehicles that's going to be allowed in from Italy, Germany, and England. It's not right. Too many. Way too many. And Japan, and they're going to supposedly do investments in this country in manufacturing that can bring up our manufacturing base. And the same thing with Japan and Korea. But I don't think those funds are ever coming. And if they are, I don't think they're going to be in the amounts that they've agreed to under contract to do. I don't see it coming because in the case of the Europeans, they're broke. They don't have that money just sitting around to invest in the United States of America. The Middle Eastern countries do, they do not. And that's something that's been talked about in our press and their press. Also, the Japanese may not have the money to fulfill their contract, and probably the Koreans don't either. So what are we going to do when they don't provide the money to invest in our country that was agreed upon under contract? Well, the only thing I can see is to raise tariffs further to stop them. The Japanese have, at this point in time, since Harley Davidson's failing, their motorcycles are becoming number one in this country. Harley, I don't feel real sorry for them. They moved a lot of their manufacturing base to Thailand, and then they thought they could just import motorcycles from Thailand back in here. Well, I got news for a lot of the Harley riders out there, and I own a Harley, and I own a Kawasaki, don't get me wrong. Both great bikes. But a lot of these new Harleys that these people are buying are made in Thailand. I mean, a lot of people liked buying Harleys because it's American iron. Well, guess what, folks? Some of you are buying Harley motorcycles. It's not American iron. They had nothing to do with America. And I've had Harley guys call me a liar. Well, go look at the motorcycles that Harley imported. You can find it on the database, the Commerce Department, of the number of motorcycles that Harley imported into the United States of America, and figure out, well, you know what? There's a lot of Thai motorcycles running around here in America that have the Harley Davidson emblem on the side of the tank. So the only way other than to totally stop trade with these nations we have deficit is to put a tariff on. And I talked to a friend of mine that I'm not going to reveal who he is. He works in the administration. He's the grandson of a friend of mine. And he said to me, Canada will never be able to get a deal with the United States on trade because the Canadians won't agree to what the Europeans, the Japanese, and the Koreans did to reinvest their money in our country. Listen, they talk about their automotive sector in Ontario especially. That idiot Doug Ford, who's the premier, the governor of Ontario, let's talk about what he is, doesn't understand that Ford, GM, and Stellantis, which used to be Chrysler, dude, those are not Canadian companies. All those factories and parts suppliers that are in Canada were poached from us. Canada doesn't have an automotive sector. Canada has a U.S. automotive sector operating there. And whose hide did those come out of? Well, the parts manufacturing and some of the plants mostly come out of Michigan. They came out of the hide of the state of Michigan. And now that's why we have places like Flint and Saginaw and all these places that are in trouble, been in trouble for years. Flint was in trouble in the 70s. Nothing's changed. It just got worse for the most part. The jobs are gone. That's why you see all these population losses. And I think the what they call CUSMA, the U.S., Canadian, Mexican, and North American, or I call NAFTA agreement, is probably going to go out of existence as it's been known. But the bottom line, for every dollar that leaves our economy and goes overseas, is dollars that cannot be used in this economy for anything. Can't be used for investment, can't be used for manufacturing, can't be used for any research and development. And more importantly, are out of the pockets of the American people. So I decided to come on here because this is simple. It's not rocket science. And for some reason, I keep watching all these programs on television, both news and opinion, and people talking about this, that, and the other. And I've been lately listening to a bunch of Canadian news and podcasters and British and French and German and even Filipino. The Filipinos have it right. They understand where America's at because the Filipinos understand that if what was going on in the United States was going on in the Philippines, that they'd go into a recession immediately, followed by probably a depression pretty quick, and that would be the end of them, their economy, for a long time. And they don't understand how the United States was able to survive. Well, how we were able to survive is simple. We borrowed money that we don't have to repay. Right now, the servicing on our debt exceeds our number one expenditure in government, which is the Department of Defense, soon to become the Department of War. We spend more servicing that debt than we do for our biggest single American expenditure. Think about that for a second. So our debt is the number one expense that the United States of America has. That can't go into anything in America because most of the people who own that debt are from China, Japan, Korea, and the Middle East. Okay, they're making the money off of providing us with money. That's where it's going. It's called the bonds market. The other thing we've been good at, especially in the 60s and 70s, and now under the Biden administration, is printing money with nothing to back it. That's just the way it is. So that money is not coming back to us, the American people. And the people who are taking it worse are the regular American people who work for a living, blue collar, who are in a hole financially and are never getting out of that hole because the government up to this point has never taken any action to stop that process I just described. But worldwide, by us taking the action we are, in those countries that were dependent upon living off the United States of America, which is a lot, okay? Some people I talked to and heard talking on the internet as well have said, well, basically that was Canada and Mexico. Well, no. That was at most of our friends and foes, including the Chinese and Russians, have gotten a lot of money from us since World War II and during World War II, not just since, you know. And some countries have basically tried to go without us. That would be a country like the Philippines, okay, which doesn't have the dollars. There's a reason why they call the U.S. dollar the world reserve currency. The world reserve currency, all that really means is that's the dollars that everybody has to pay us and everybody else in the world. They have dollars. Why? Because they're running surpluses with us getting paid in dollars. Like the Germans, like the Italians, like the French, like the British, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, Vietnam, Thailand. Basically, that anybody who sells us anything has dollars. So behind the scenes, when they're buying more than just from us, guess what? They're using the dollars they got from us to pay for it. I.e., the world reserve currency is the U.S. dollar. So that's that. That's my rant one. I'm going to put this on YouTube if I can figure out how to do it. It's sure nice meeting you. I'll be back. Bye-bye.